I've spent countless hours with my noggin squeezed in the PSVR2 over the last few days, and I definitely have some thoughts. I will say right off Jump Street, this is not even a comparison to the original PSVR, which felt like an absolute toy. This is a real deal headset that can offer you some pretty intense experiences.
There's more. Of course there's more. There goes its armor. Felt that. It's off balance.
Well, 3 notable experiences, 2 of which are VR modes for already existing games, and only one of them is a purpose-built VR experience. You know which one that is, Smash Me on the Mountain.
Which one's grasp?
It's headed towards us.
And this $550 chunk of plastic doesn't have PC support yet. I will cover in the video 2 possible paths of PC support, Sony and not Sony. Illicit third-party mods and cracks. Now, just like the jump from a PlayStation 4 to a PS5, the generational leap from the original PSVR to the second gen is astronomical. However, if you can get past the very scarce launch library, there's also some other issues with comfort, as this uses a very unique Halo design that might be difficult to adjust for smaller heads. The Sense controllers are far from perfect, and I'm not a fan of the included audio solution, but this hardware does more good than bad. I will just say the lack of software is kind of stinky at the moment. Now, if you're looking for a freakishly comprehensive in-depth review of this headset that's mildly humorous and slightly entertaining, then you've come to the right place. The video is broken into chapters, which are reflected in the description and timeline of the video for easy navigation, because in proper gamer heaven fashion, it's pretty lengthy and also quite girthy, packed, juicy, ready to burst with content, I would say. In fact, I'm throwing off the pacing right now, for God's sake. Run the intro, please. A quick disclaimer for my audience, the Stallions and Stallionettes. This headset was bought with my hard-earned money, so if you like the video, go ahead and grease up your thumb and smack that like button around like it owes you money. Also have a merch store too, so if you're tired of being naked, there's clothes, or you're tired of holding your coffee in your hand because it burns like a motherfucker, coffee cups as well. As for the numbers, Mason, what do they mean? This is a pretty balls-to-the-wall headset. At least its tech specs are looking pretty good. Panel resolution is 2040 per eye. Those are OLED panels, which should give you those inky blacks. However, there is also a benefit to going with LED panels as well, as mentioned during my Valve Index review. Now, those panels will refresh at either 90 or 120 hertz depending on the content that you're playing. Now, I will say in that aspect, the PSVR2 is absolutely killing it in the display department, going with OLED panels, also the highest resolution, which, as seen on this comparison chart from IGN, is leading the pack. The field of view is 110 degrees. That is going to be approximate, as with all VR headsets, because it depends on things like how kicked out the headset is from your face, because that is adjustable on headsets like the PSVR2 and the Valve Index. But how does that stack up to the competition? Why don't you take a looky-loo right here. Better than its predecessor in the Oculus Quest 2, but the Index is in another league when it comes to FOV and refresh rate. And if you want to get nitty-gritty with the motion tracking of the headset, it is 6-way, and that is going to be 3-axis gyroscope and 3-axis accelerometer, Matthew McMatherson, 6-axis motion sensing system. 3+3, don't bang your knee in VR. Hardy har har. Cameras, you know, if you've seen my Valve Index review, that I am a big fan of inside-out tracking rather than setting up external base stations like you have to do with PC headsets such as the HTC Vive and the Valve Index. And feedback, this absolutely needs mention because it comes into play immediately when you launch your first game, is going to be vibration on the headset, haptic feedback vibrating on your noggin. There is a long, relatively thin, somewhat flexible USB-C cable. That is the only individual cable that you will plug to the front of your PS5 console. Make sure you use that USB-C port on the front. I guess you're going to have to, considering there's only one USB-C port. And as for the audio, which I'll bash on later, not really bash on, but it is definitely my least favorite solution out of all the headsets that I do currently own. And if you want the stats, the tech specs of the VR Sense controllers, they're right here, but there's an entire section later in the video. They do some things right, but my God, they do some things wrong as well. I can tell you right now, just from looking at that picture, the tracking rings are massive. So if you're trying to reload or anything, you're going to be smacking into them, maybe hitting the side of your goggle when you're drawing back a bow. Who knows? Those tracking rings are massive. As for the packaging with the PSVR2, this is the Call of the Mountain bundle. So it is $50 more expensive than the entry-level bundle, which is going to come with the VR kit, everything you need to get up and running, goggle, 2 controllers. As this is the bundle, it's primarily showcasing Call of the Mountain over here, which we're going to talk about later. Kind of the only major launch title, not kind of, it is the only major launch title for this VR headset, and since it's not PC compatible. She likes when I do that metal on metal contact. Since it's not a PC compatible headset like the Valve Index, which I reviewed here recently, pretty much buying a headset that's more expensive than the PS5 console itself to only play like one game right now. Like 2 or 3, but like one major title. Packaging and included accessories, guys and gals. Contents of the bundle, what should be in here, and if not, there's a problem. VR headset, obviously. VR 2 sense controllers, left and right. You got 2 left feet and 2 left controllers. Issue. Here, off balance with the VR. USB-C cable and stereo headphones included. Should we get excited about those now, or swappable ear caps, I guess you could say, for the earbuds? And then a voucher, a digital voucher, of course. I knew that was going to be the delivery method for the game, considering PlayStation sells a digital-only console. It would only make sense that they're going to just have a digital card rather than slipping a disc in there. They ain't slipping a disc in my slot. Jim Ryan, no sir. Safe maneuvers happening with this knife right now. Realized the light wasn't on for the back of the TV. So after you cut into these 2 tamper seals, I really do like the little holographic PlayStation one. That's always tickled my corneas. Once you've cut into those, you can open it like a treasure chest, and it better be a treasure to you because this sucker's expensive. But the inner box is pretty sweet as well. You do have the traditional PlayStation symbols here in the front, and then up top it is very Apple-like, all sterile white with the little black PlayStation logo with R for registered or renegade or whatever you want to call it. Bam, box, headset. Sense 1, Sense 2, common sense. This is what's holding your gear in place. No laser cut foam or anything fancy like that. Just some cardboard in here with a little PlayStation stamp and sigil in there. All right, I mean... And then the controllers and headset are just held in these little moisture-wicking bags. I've been told I have a pretty expressive face, and it's probably working overtime right now because this is pretty gross, I'm gonna say. Obviously, I've said it in the past and I'll say it again, if manufacturers want to have blatantly cheap or shitty packaging and then pass that savings on to the consumer, that's fantastic, but we're talking about a $550 console-centric or console-only VR headset. To say I expected a little bit more in the packaging department would be an understatement, especially after having just raved about the DualSense Edge for the last few weeks up and down the internet, but I digress. Let me get a little peekaroo. How do you do? Peek of the goods. We're looking at the undercarriage right now. I'd like to look topside. Wait, what? We'll talk extensively about the headset, obviously. Careful with those lenses. And in this box, you're curious what's in there. I'm curious as well. This is my initial unboxing as well. We're experiencing this as a team, as a duo. Okay, so I'm assuming that's not how Sony wanted that box to be opened up, but it was. Here's my digital voucher for Horizon Call of the Mountain. If I flip it around backside, one of you can take advantage of that. Just kidding. You actually have to scratch off the code, and I'm gonna redeem it before the video goes live anyway. Or not live, you know, public. What the fuck is this? Oh my god. You have a 3.5mm jack here. I recognize this. I've seen one of these before. And then you got a plastic bar that goes across. And then a little plastic pin, which I'm sure will snap into the headset. These little bad boys go a-dangling, but you can just pop them in your ear whenever you need. Actually, very nice squishy rubber silicone on here, so not like those hard plastic crappy buds that used to come with cell phones and accessories back in the day. These feel decent. We'll see about sound quality later. You have that included cable for pairing and charging. It looks quite short. I'm gonna guesstimate about 5 foot. Pretty bulky in the USB-A and C end with this plastic housing. No rubber or Velcro tie back that you're gonna hold on to, just a throwaway little bread bag tie. And then you have your instruction manual, pamphlet, or brochure, which you can rest assured I shall be diving into right now head first. Michael Phelps. Health and safety information, which nobody's gonna read unless nobody's gonna read. It's on page 4. The quick start pages are 8 through 10, and then the deep dive instructions are gonna be from pages 10 to 18. The tech specs are on page 19. Now, in all caps over here on page 20, that is going to be your limited hardware warranty and liability, entire section about the warranty later in the video. And this is an interesting segment I'm seeing in more instruction manuals, end-of-life product recycling, because all of these products, devices we're buying, these consumer electronic devices, will eventually become e-waste unless you're going to repurpose them into some cool art for your house or some shit like that, which you're probably not. So yeah, this will explain to you how to dispose of it properly. Just like the MetaQuest 2, initial setup with this headset is incredibly easy. Much easier than the original PSVR for PS4. The USB-C port on the front of the PS5 console is by far the fastest USB-C port, so use it. Now, the included non-modular, permanently affixed USB-C cable is pretty damn tangled right out of the box, so what I'd recommend before you plug in your headset to use it initially is just, I don't know why I said it like that, initially,
According to my calculations, this is what you need to do to make sure you don't fuck your headset.
you need to untangle the sucker because it's super coiled up. Now, as soon as you plug in, you're going to see this red LED light become illuminated. There's a power button on the bottom, which you're going to hold down for a couple of seconds. And that status indicator light is going to blink white and then go solid white on you. Also, we've heard about it from all the tech demos and whatnot, but just feeling it, as soon as you turn the headset on, there is haptic vibration in the goggle, in the headset. So when you're getting shot at and whatnot, it's rattling on your face. You can, of course, turn that off because it could be very disorienting. Now, for the initial setup, you will need a standard DualSense controller. I got a stalker in hand here, and we're going to go ahead and get this bad boy updated with that initial patch or update. Do it. Startled me, vibration over shoulder, because again, headset has haptics, which every single time that it's, you know, something's happening with it, it's getting updated or turned on, turned off, it's vibrating, scaring the piss out of you. Just move myself up here if you don't mind. Get ready for an immersive gaming experience with PSVR2 with one game, basically. To get started, set up your PSVR2 Sense controllers. Adjust eye tracking, which is like by far one of the coolest and most unique features of this headset. You don't really see that in very many VR headsets, especially in the price point, let me tell you. Now we need to connect the included audio, these two stereo buds. And they are going to be our buds, our pals, and our amigos in the audio department, because you're not going to be hearing shit without them. You can't really do this the wrong way. The 3.5mm headphone jack plugs into the left, and then that little plastic prong or peg snaps into a hole over here on the right. Sockets in, if you will, for security, financial and job security. There we go. Very interesting stuff from Sony in the instruction manual department over here. Very in-depth in certain aspects, like talking about the facial gasket, which looks like an accordion, how to take that rubber bitch off and clean it if you're going to be using this headset to work out in, or if you're going to sweat in it, period, just playing any game. But after reading through this entire manual, they don't mention the IPD slider or what IPD is. If some casual consumer, maybe for example a console gamer that owns a PlayStation 5, gets this as their first headset, puts this bad boy on their head and is like, oh my god, I feel like I've been flashbanged, I'm so disoriented, everything is blurry. The reason for that is, my amigo, is this wheel on the left side is your IPD, or interpupillary distance, because everyone's eyes are different width apart, and your lenses will adjust accordingly, as you can see. Then you have an additional layer of adjustment or customization with this button, which works as kind of a little kick out, which is fantastic for getting clearance over glasses, or just that little bone, that little crown of the eyebrows that we all have that sticks out further on some people. Not to mention some individuals like your boy over here have long eyelashes, and those are just mopping grease on the lenses the whole time if you don't kick out the gosh darn display suite far enough. That's what this is for. This feels kind of plasticky and cheap doing this. Yeah, it sounds and feels just like this thing's about to snap. That's not confidence inducing at all. I'm gonna don this headset. I have notes, thoughts, and complaints, unfortunately. Pull out the scope. You gosh darn bet that I will. Done. Release the headband. Done as well. Oh, it knows that it's not on my head. I can't lie here or fake it. I actually pop it on the noggin here. Perfect, perfect. Choking myself out with the cord. Now I want to take a deep dive into the eye tracking on the PSVR2 because it does a couple of things really awesomely, I guess, for lack of a better word, very beneficial to the headset, but yet it isn't utilized correctly in some other aspects. For example, this headset should absolutely be able to acquire an individual's IPD automatically as soon as you put the headset on, because the eye tracking is freakishly accurate. I'm overlaying the B-roll right now of what I'm talking about. There is this calibration mode, which by the way is kind of a bitch to get into. You have to click through a menu, a sub-menu, and then a sub-sub menu to get to it. You share this headset with multiple users, then that's kind of a problem. Granted, you don't need to use this. You can just manually use the IPD slider on the top of the goggle until the image stops looking blurry and you're able to read text in game and not have a headache. But what I do like about the eye tracking is it makes navigating game menus really quick, and also aim assist works phenomenally in Horizon Call of the Mountain because you simply look at what you want to shoot at, draw your bow, and it kind of draws the arrow to it. It's called gaze tracking. I can tell from how accurate the eye tracking is navigating menus and shooting objects in the VR environment that acquiring the IPD is no problem. What it came down to was Sony trying to cut costs by not having a mechanical motor to automatically move the lenses back and forth for you. That's why this doesn't have automatic IPD. Maybe weight as well, because there would be a little additional weight in the headset for having a motor to move back and forth, but there's other headsets out there. For example, the Quest Pro, which I don't really recommend that headset for anybody, but that has automatic IPD because it has eye tracking just like this headset. So why is Sony not implementing it better here? Initial setup is super easy, and even though they don't explain IPD in the instruction manual, they do have an eye distance guide, which is mandatory the first time you put the headset on. You'll pair up your controllers, get your guardian boundary, your safe space, your play zone set up. Wow, that's insane. Holy crap, that is so accurate. Wow. Okay. That was pretty damn accurate. It actually knows exactly where my floor is, and we have to say style points. I mean, it's PlayStation symbols or face buttons. That's so cool. So you can either be stationary or room scale. I, of course, am going to be room scale. And yeah, that's pretty damn amazing. Wow, that's insane. Perfect. No editing needed. Wish my videos are like that. Sick. Now, after about 2 hours of gameplay, I was going to give this headset a 3 out of 10 for comfort. However, after an additional 7 hours of gameplay, plus 30 hours of running drills, if you will, basically donning and removing this headset over and over, trying to figure out how to quickly and comfortably get this headset on in my sweet spot to where I can throw this bad boy on like I can do with my Valve Index or my Quest 2 in the living room and get up and gaming pretty much instantaneously. Because of two design aspects with the PSVR2, comfort's going to be a 7 out of 10, as it's still a 5 out of 10 for me personally, but I think this headset will be a 9 out of 10 for most gamers picking up this headset, so you get a little bit of the mathematics. Averages out to a 7, you don't really care about it. The grade that Gamer Heaven is giving it is a 7. Because out of the 3 VR headsets I own and use pretty much daily, if not daily then weekly, let's get realistic, there's some days I don't even pop on a headset, but most days I do. Because of the two design aspects that I'm going to mention, which you can probably even see cosmetically just from looking at these 3 goggles, these 3 headsets side by side, it is the least comfortable of the 3 headsets that I do own. I do want to caveat that by saying I have dumped in at about an additional $200 in upgrades to my Quest 2. Comfort-wise, this has a lot of adjustment, these little padded dibbity-doo-dahs on top, also a magnetized dock for a battery pack. I love this headset. But the stock Quest 2 is an uncomfortable piece of shit, and this is a step up from that. However, the Valve Index is a hug for your face, basically. Just don't work out with it. Whatever you do. Now, the two aspects that make this an uncomfortable experience for me and also make the sweet spot very tight and also make it to where the headset shifts around during gameplay when you're just looking around, making it to where you're not in your sweet spot unless you are constantly cognitively thinking, I gotta keep my eyes in line with the lenses here. The sweet spot's pretty taut, and that does fall into comfort. You might be thinking I'm wandering into the display territory of the review. No sir, no ma'am. Sony decided to go with this Halo design, which as you can notice immediately has no kind of a Velcro head strap, which I've never seen on a headset before. Instead of this headset being perfectly horizontally aligned, if you will, as you can see, it's a straight line here. You got your goggle, and then you got the back strap, and then usually you'll have a Velcro top strap, which will take the majority of the weight of the headset. Oh, golly, not over here, but over here on the PSVR2, as you can see, it's tilted at an angle. This is going to be wrapped around the top of your forehead, pretty much up on your hairline, and then this is going to be around the crown or the back of your skull. A little issue here, if you have a small head, or you don't have a very rounded back of your head, for example, your boy here is kind of flat in the back, you know? You can't tell because I've been growing out my hair here, but I don't have much of a rounded crown to the back of the skull as some individuals. That makes this design very, very difficult for me to get comfortable with. And the next issue, and this is applicable to pretty much everyone, not just me, and that's going to be these lenses. The plastic shrouds for the lenses are relatively large, which cut into my nose pretty substantially, and yes, there is a kick out here. However, since this has a subpar field of view, you want to get the panels as close to your eyes as possible before your eyelashes start brushing against the lenses, creating grease, or you start feeling discomfort around this little ball on your nose or up here on your eyebrows, because the lenses will actually start pressing into your skin. It's uncomfortable. So I'm constantly juggling, do I want to have the best field of view possible that this headset can offer me, or do I want to not have the lenses digging into the bone of my nose? Obviously, I'm going to choose the one where I'm not crying in the headset. But just physically looking here in the Quest 2, I'm sorry my lenses might be a little dirty. I don't know if I cleaned her off after yesterday's workout, but as you can see, lenses are actually cut in at an angle to fit a human nose. Oh, by golly jeepers, the Valve Index does the same thing. It's almost as if that makes sense. But over here on Sony's device, it's much more rounded, doesn't really have a cut-in for your nose. So you have this hard plastic, hard and kind of sharp, to be honest, digging into your nose constantly, plus because of this Halo crown design. So you hold down the ratchet button, extend the Halo. If you do have the headphones plugged in, the little earbuds, just plug them into these little silicone niblets so they don't scratch your lenses by just dangling around. I don't think it mentions that in the instruction manual. Hold the button, extend the Halo, don over the top, line up the rubber silicone on your forehead, let let this go, ratchet it down. There's this rubber accordion here, which basically eliminates all light bleed, which is really, really nice. You hold down this button on the top and you're able to kick out or extend until your eyelashes and nose bone make clearance. However, here's the thing. Because there's not a fantastic field of view with this headset, again, like I said, I'm constantly balancing. Do I want a good field of view or do I want to be comfortable with this headset? And I don't have that issue with either one of these headsets. Granted, PSVR2 does have a better field of view than the Quest 2. Even further update to the comfort after getting even more time with the goggles sucked to my damn head like a head crab from Half-Life. It is now even more comfortable. However, in order to achieve that comfort, I have to wear the headset extremely loose, meaning I would never work out with this headset. Not that I was going to do that anyway because it's wired, for God's sake. But if I want to firmly affix this headset the same way I snugly fit on my Quest 2 or the Valve Index, it provides a ton of undue pressure around my forehead with that silicone or rubber pad, which by the way isn't really that soft or supple. It's just rubber. It's not like any kind of padding whatsoever. Yeah, this up here is just easy to clean. That's awesome, but not the best for comfort for sure. Also, there isn't much padding in the back either. It's just rubber, and then you push in and then you feel, yep, that's a hard frame of plastic, the rear head strap. But how I would like to wear the headset firmly affixed to my face quite snugly to where I can quickly turn my head around and not have the headset shift or wiggle around to where I'm out of my sweet spot and I'm seeing a blurry image until I shift my headset back around again. And then if I want to get the lenses close enough to my eyes to where the field of view is actually a good field of view for a VR headset coming out in 2023, considering the Valve Index has a beastly FOV and came out June 28th of 2019, so like 4 years ago. But where I want the lenses sitting to get a good field of view, the plastic shrouds are sharpened plastic and they're cutting into my nose as well. So ouch on the forehead, ouch on the nose, how I want to wear the headset. But to caveat all this and summarize it all, I can wear the headset very, very comfortably with not the best field of view that the headset could offer and wearing the headset pretty damn loose to where I can't really whip around much. Yay! Compromises, you know? Headset's comfortable now, baby. Now in the display department, Sony is absolutely killing it. We're talking 240p, 120 hertz OLED panels per eye. I don't know where the little southern twang came from, but they're pretty kick-ass. Seen an OLED TV or panel before is those inky blacks, the rich, vibrant colors, and the fact that OLED generally is pretty sensual in the visuals department. These lenses don't seem to have that catastrophic glare. They do have a slight glare, but it is nothing like what the Valve Index sports, which is almost crippling. Now I kept the peak brightness of this headset at 100%, no surprise there. I generally do max out the brightness of most headsets unless it starts looking a little bit washed out, which I'll taper back. Wasn't an issue here, and it did seem like the peak brightness was higher than the Valve Index. However, that could have been the content I was playing, considering I mostly play Half-Life Alyx and Fallout 4 VR on the Index, which are pretty dark games. PSVR2, I'm playing Call of the Mountain, where you're outdoors climbing a mountain, you're in the sunlight, not IRL. I ain't getting no vitamin D for real, I'm inside my room, but you know, I'm climbing a damn mountain. It is bright out there. It's a bright game. This headset looked amazing. So you combine the 240p OLED panels in here, plus the fact that this is driven or powered from the processing power of the PS5. This is a powerful headset, and it looks very, very good. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Repeat, a 9 out of 10. There is a 3.5mm headphone jack on the back of the headband, and the good thing about that is that does support the Tempest audio engines of the PS5, which is that virtual surround sound due to the audio driver suite, if you want to call it that, on the PlayStation 5. It's fantastic. It works great with the, give me a sec, the Pulse 3D headset, which I have reviewed on the channel and was actually very impressed with, especially for the price point and the driver size and a bunch of other factors. Quite apparent to me that Sony is definitely trying to incentivize owners of this headset to buy an aftermarket headset such as probably their Pulse 3D. And I do believe this is also advertised as supporting the Tempest surround sound. It does not. This is just a stereo pair of earbuds here, or at least that's what it sounded like. I did not get that beautiful stereo spread and that virtual surround, that super immersive feeling that you get with, for example, the situational audio. That's what I always call the integrated speakers on these VR headsets, like the Valve Index, which swivel down and sit about an inch over your ear and basically cast sound around you, but you can still hear things in your room. Same thing with the Quest 2. This doesn't have any integrated speakers whatsoever. I really wish Sony had some kind of situational speaker system, not here. And these will get the job done, but like I mentioned, I was pretty flaccid in the audio department during my playthrough of Horizon VR, Gleek Me on the Mountain, and Resident Evil Village VR. I also have the Gran Turismo 7 VR port, so basically the three notable like launch titles for this headset. Reviews coming for all those soon. Probably not the Gran Turismo one, because it's just a port of an existing game that I've already reviewed on the channel. On the left side, you're going to plug in this 3.5mm headphone jack. Be cognizant of the fact that you do have glass lenses in here, and this hard plastic could bounce up and scratch the shit out of your lenses. But when not in use, go ahead and pop these into these silicone holders up here. And then what you can do is just kind of wrap these around your ears and let them hover over your ears, but not actually go inside if you kind of want that situational audio like I explained earlier, but it's not the same. You're basically gonna have to put these in your ear. They're earbuds, that's what they're meant to do. And they just sound like stereo 2.1 earbuds. They don't sound like any kind of virtual surround or anything like that. Sony wants you to buy the Pulse 3D, baby! It's simple as that. They want you to buy the Pulse 3D. And in case you're wondering, Kevin, how would that work exactly? Because this doesn't have Bluetooth. How are you gonna use these? These are wireless. So you're still gonna use that dongle to plug into the front or back of your console, but you just go into your PlayStation home menu, into the quick settings, and you're able to swap over to the wireless audio. I'll shows you. It's actually really comfortable. Like for real. 5 out of 10 for the included audio on the PSVR2. Now as for tracking, I have an entire section in my Valve Index review where I talk about why I prefer inside-out tracking, where you have cameras looking out at your hands and basically the rest of your room, as opposed to external base stations which you have to set up. You can see the base station 2.0s for the Valve Index wall mounted over shoulder. Now unfortunately, I have lost tracking with the PSVR2 about 6 or 7 times, and I've only played with it for about 12.5 hours, so that's not good considering my Oculus Quest 2, I've lost tracking on it or had tracking issues where I've noticed, hey, what the hell's going on? It's not recognizing my right hand or whatever. 5 or 6 times, and I've owned that headset for years. Granted, I play in very well lit rooms. I have 4 lights on me currently. Now, the PSVR 2 is using a similar, almost identical system to the Quest 2, which is 4 cameras outward facing. I'm hoping and assuming that over time with patches and updates, the tracking will get better, but thus far, I'm gonna have to give tracking a 4 out of 10, as like I mentioned, I'm losing tracking, and I'm not whipping around doing Beat Saber where I'm behind my back or anything, and my hands start stuttering and sputtering out of control. That's pretty wild to me. Good morning. So an update to the tracking situation. It is substantially better after having done an update to the console and to the headset recently. However, I do want to mention there is a video floating around YouTube with about 160,000 views telling people to enable advanced tracking in the PlayStation 5 settings to get better tracking on the PSVR 2. I would like to explain to everyone watching this video to only do that if you are having catastrophic tracking issues worse than what I was experiencing with my 3 minor hand issues and my 3 big game breaking, hey, gotta pause the game and figure out what's going on with the controller issues. Then I would recommend going in the PSVR settings and engaging advanced tracking, which puts a border around your window, but don't do that unless you're having serious tracking issues. Like serious, not like me complaining on the internet, but like you can't use your headset because it's having tracking issues. Now as for the Sense controllers, 3 components I like and a bunch of things I don't. Now the Sense controllers do share 2 of the core features of a regular DualSense controller for PS5, that being the haptic feedback vibration and the adaptive triggers. I want to touch on these one by one. The haptic feedback does have the same accuracy, meaning it can do all kinds of cool simulations, you crunching on sand, but it doesn't have the peak vibration strength. When it's at 100% balls to the wall, it's not going to really rattle your hand as much as a full-size DualSense controller. Same thing with the adaptive triggers. The feature is definitely present where the triggers get stiffer, lighter, depending on the action on screen. That's fantastic, but it doesn't have that same strength, that same resistance that you get from a full-size DualSense controller, and that does make sense. These are smaller individual controllers. And the third component I really like about the Sense controllers, which is actually a multiple parter. It's actually multiple components. First of all, the face buttons are nice, tactile, clicky, responsive, good resistance, and they are presence sensors as well. So before you actually press the button, it just senses that your thumb is near or around the button. So you're able to do things like give the thumbs up in game. Next up, the PlayStation button, which is going to get you in and out of your menu, is almost flush with the shell and also requires a good amount of resistance. So you're not going to accidentally hit it, at least not much. Also, I think it's in a good position to where you can kind of roll down your thumb and use the ball of your thumb, this little bone, to press that PlayStation button if you need to get in your menu real quick. Also, the analog stick or thumbstick is very nice as well. You have a good range of motion, good travel, good resistance. Clicking down L3 and R3 feels good, and the silicone or rubber compound they use on the surface area is very grippy and comfortable. And this little button over here, which is going to be your share button on the left and your pause button on the right, just like a regular DualSense controller, are phenomenal. Now that I've given these controllers their due praise, it's time to just slap them around a little bit because they deserve that as well. Immediately when I picked up these controllers, I was shocked at how light they are. Now that's actually really good for comfort because you're swinging these things around. You want a light controller and headset headset for that matter. However, it really doesn't add to that feeling of build quality, and then that is continued when you look and you're like, holy shit, there's some massive panel gaps over here, uneven seams, and the feel of all the plastics just feels so goddamn cheap. These feel so cheap. It is ridiculous. This is like a brick picking it up. In comparison to the Valve Index or the Quest 2, this has a little aftermarket sleeve that allows me to completely let go of the controller. Plastics feel incredibly cheap. Next up, these sensor rings are quite large, which comes into play when you're trying to reload a gun and you're clacking these against each other, or maybe smacking the side of your goggle when you're knocking an arrow and pulling back your bow. Next up, I absolutely hate with a passion restraint system over here. I do cosmetically like the little PlayStation logo on there. I think that's kind of cute. These suck. Because of the shape of these Sense controllers, when you just let them go hangling and dangling, and granted, there is a better way to do this where you wrap your hand around, but still, when you let these bad boys go, and then you have a goggle on so you can't see what the hell's going on, yes, you can engage pass-through. We'll talk about that later. It's very good. Trying to get yourself back in the controller, I'm fumbling with these things way more than I should or have with any other VR controller because of this weird shaped or sculpt sensor ring, which I mentioned is very large, then where they decided to mount this restraint strap. Not a fan whatsoever. Next up, there is a pattern across the black plastics, which is little PlayStation logos or symbols. However, that stippling or texture doesn't add to grip whatsoever like it does on the DualSense controller. It is incredibly slippery and slick. Next up, these inner buttons, which is going to be L1 and R1. They are capacitive touch sensors, or proximity sensors, I should say, just like the face buttons, to where when your hand starts to approach, your character on screen will start closing their hand to maybe grab an item, or just cosmetically, yep, that makes sense. I'm closing my hand IRL, and my character's closing their hand too. So I was originally concerned, since this button is not a linear squeeze like the Quest 2, it's just an on-off switch, 0 to 100. And this entire section here is not a sensor bar. There is no hand tracking down here whatsoever. I tested that extensively in multiple games and nothing happens here whatsoever. It's all over this button right here. These three fingers are going to be linked to this button right here. So when you put your middle finger over this button, it's closing your three fingers in game. And then obviously your index finger is going to be over the trigger. And same thing with the trigger. As you approach it, your character's index finger will begin to close. You don't actually need to physically squeeze or press the trigger. It's just resting your finger on the trigger that lets it know, hey, close that finger. So not the most accurate hand tracking in comparison to something like the Valve Index, which has an entire panel for individual fingers and also how much pressure you're applying to each finger. You're only getting that pressure sensitivity on this one little panel right here. And as for battery life, I am seeing a lot of varied information on the internet. However, in my experience, an hour and a half of charge time will get you about 5 hours of use. I have gotten a low battery notification on both controllers once. Well, the left controller twice, the right controller once. Now, granted, most people's VR sessions are not going to last anywhere near 5 hours, but luckily for Sony's wallet and for users of these controllers, there is a charging dock available for $50 on their website. It does have the same aesthetics or looks of the PlayStation 5, that reversed Oreo white and black design. So it'll go with, well, the headset, the console, the Pulse 3D headset, the charging dock for the DualSense controllers, the DualSense controllers themselves, Sense controllers, pretty much the PlayStation 5 ecosystem, which all looks the same. Not mine, because I hate stock shit and it's been customized. It's up, down, sideways, and silly on the channel, but PS5's blandaroony, vanilla. But if you don't have that dock, there is a USB-C port on the front bottom of each controller, and that is how you're going to charge them. Again, an hour and a half will get you about 5 hours of runtime. I'm seeing all kinds of crazy stuff on the internet. 3 to 8 hours. One article quoted 8 to 12 hours. 5 is what I've been experiencing. If you're curious about the warranty on this headset, because I sure as hell was, and you're getting a lot of different information on the internet, this is from the lips of the horse right here, meaning a page on the manufacturer's website specifically about the PSVR. Granted, this is probably PSVR 1, but hey, it's the same goddamn thing. 1 year. Well, there's even a Reddit post over here. One major issue I have with this 1-year warranty system is going to be that goddamn affixed cable, because it is not modular. It's not meant to be removed. You can remove it by removing the padding and the head strap, and then removing a plastic piece or a shroud, a cover, if you will, and then removing that cable. It is not modular. It's not meant to be removed. PlayStation does not sell replacement parts. For example, Valve sells $130, which I know is freakishly expensive, but less expensive than a $500 headset, replacement tether cable, 16-foot tether cable for the Valve Index. If you snap the cable on this PSVR2, you are absolutely fucked if you're outside that 1-year scope and scale of warranty. Now, a quick note I wanted to bring to the attention of my audience that I heard from Get Hip, which is a VR YouTuber. Dude's hilarious. Check him out over there. Sony has a patent, and let me just say real quick, Sony has patents for so much stuff. They had a banana that you could literally convert into a controller, or it wasn't just the banana, it was all kinds kinds of inanimate objects. So cucumbers, popsicles, shish kebabs.
The best kinds.
But one of Sony's random patents that they have filed that I'm sure they will implement with social games around the PSVR2 headset is going to be shadow banning players that are using obscene gestures at Sony's discretion. What the hell is obscene? But probably flipping the bird. You know how I like to draw rocket ships? I'm an aficionado of spacecraft, so obviously when I have the opportunity to express my artistic ability in a VR title like Half-Life Alyx or Horizon Smash Me on the Mountain, I'm going to dip my finger in some paste that I'm going to draw some kind of a big veiny spacecraft. Now, single player offline VR experiences, which is pretty much what I play with VR headsets. I'm not really into the whole social experiences and stuff like VR chat and all that stuff. Not really my thing. But also competitive online multiplayers that require a VR headset, such as Population 1 or Pavlov or whatever the kids are playing nowadays. COD VR, if that ever becomes a thing. But there's already first-person shooters that are online multiplayer. You get my point. You flip somebody the bird, teabag him a little bit, degrade his corpse as if killing him with that headshot wasn't enough. And Sony gets whiff of it, gets win. They're standing down win, one of their moderators in the game, or whatever system they have in place, probably a machine that's scanning for these offensive gestures, and you could get shadow banned. Now, if it's just that you can't play that particular online title anymore, that still sucks. But if it's something like bricking your headset, which Facebook used to do, where you had to have a valid Facebook account to link to your headset, and if you did something naughty on Facebook and you got banned on Facebook for a week, you know, a temp ban or a perma ban, it would actually brick your headset as well because you need to be linked up to Facebook. Now you just need a Meta account, which doesn't require you to be linked to a Facebook account. You can create a separate Meta account. But this whole threat of shadow banning, because Sony has this patent filed, is just yet another reason why I don't really do a lot of like social stuff. I do online competitive multiplayer like COD and stuff like that, but I guess they can't tell that I'm flipping them off unless I'm in VR, and that's where the line is drawn. As for the cons, I'm going to start with the small nitpicky stuff and then just progressively work my way up to bigger issues. You know how I mentioned during the comfort section that it was a 5 for me and 9 for most people, averages out to a 7? I am happy to announce that it is now a 7 for me as well. But still, I'm going to have to list that as a con. It's just still not the most comfortable headset for me. I know that in essence, the theory here is that you can just dangle it off your head weightlessly because the headset itself is very light, but it doesn't have a head strap that goes over the top. Instead of being like this, it's like this. But if you're somebody that has a flatter back of their head, it makes it very difficult to really have a spot to latch onto. It's a con for me, like comfort-wise for sure. The Sense controllers, I am also unfortunately going to list the overall presentation with those as a con because they feel incredibly cheap, and it's not just that they're light. Being light is a good thing in VR. You want the headset and the controllers light, but they feel cheap. The plastics used feel cheap. There are pros of the controller, which I'll be mentioned during the pro section, and it does feel like if I slam these against a wall because a guardian boundary is glitched out in a game, or I'm not paying attention to it, or whatever, I have a whoopsie-daisy. They don't sell replacement controllers yet, at least not on their website or anywhere that I've seen. Doing a Google search, they're missing out on money by not selling replacements. But if you break one of these controllers, you can't get a replacement, and there is no third-party aftermarket support for silicone rubber covers like this, which there is a ton, hundreds, probably thousands on Amazon for the Quest 2, and even the Valve Index, that has a smaller like third-party aftermarket. But as it is a brand new headset, a new device, it doesn't have a lot of, or any accessories right now on Amazon, so nothing to protect your controller. Don't break them. Next up, I'm not too fond of the 3.5 millimeter jack. I mean, don't get me wrong, it needed to have a jack. I'm glad it does, but it should have also had built-in speakers like the Quest 2, the notably cheaper Quest 2, or like the more expensive Valve Index and most other high-end headsets that have built-in speakers that don't even go in your ear. They just hover sound around you and spatial audio. It adds to that VR experience. It truly does, IMO, or in my opinion. You don't get that here. You just have to pop some earbuds in or pop for the Pulse 3D headset. That's what Sony wants you to do. It is a really good headset. Next up, the permanently affixed cord. The fact that it's not modular or removable. You can remove it, but there's no replacement parts. It's not meant to be removed. You're still screwed if you were accidentally standing on the cable and then you go to put your headset on and you're like, oh shit, oh, I just ripped out my cable or something like that. That would suck. You're screwed. You're in the 1-year spec of warranty. I know you are because the headset just came out, but is Sony going to validate that, considering that was negligence on your part, just being a numbsclum silly boy? It was operator error, not like a faulty manufacturing thing. But hey, it is a faulty manufacturing thing in my eyes because, hey, make it a removable modular USB-C cable. It has a release clip that you have to hold down so it doesn't pop out all the time. But then you hold down that sturdy release clip and it pops out and you can buy a $40 replacement. Yeah, these headset companies don't do that. The tracking is bad. Like I said, I've lost tracking to where I've had to pause my game and figure out what the hell's going on, take off my headset. hey, is my controller low on battery? What's going on? Like 6 or 7 times, and I've only had the headset for like 3 days, played about 12 hours with it. Golly jeepers on that one. And finally, the biggest con is just going to be the lack of software to back up the hardware. And this doesn't have PC support, so as opposed to like the Valve Index or HTC Vive or any PC-centric headset where you can play a Steam library of thousands of games that have VR support, plus there's like games that don't have official developer support, but yet the modding community jumps in. For example, Grand Theft Auto 5, there's a first-person view, so yeah, there's a VR mod to like put a headset on and look around in Grand Theft Auto, but you can't do any of that stuff with the PSVR2. But what you can do is patiently wait for Sony to release more first-party titles, which I'm assuming, if they're anything like Smash Me on the Mountain, are going to be hella fun, because thus far Horizon VR has been a great experience. Comprehensive review coming in the near future. It's not perfect, but it's good.
It's good.
This is the only dedicated VR title, and you can absolutely tell when a game is built from the ground up for VR, for example, Half-Life Alyx, and then you play a game that is ported over from a console or PC, for example, Fallout 4 VR. You can absolutely tell the interface when you're browsing menus, navigating, not as fluid and smooth because it's not built for the motions of VR. Both of these two games are mere ports. Granted, they are incredibly in-depth. The Gran Turismo 7 mode, there's hundreds of cars that you can look around the cockpits of, and the graphics are fucking insane. I mentioned previously that I had not played Village, and I was excited because my first experience was going to be in VR. So I'm going to be playing this title. I'm excited for it, but I do believe that Horizon VR Call of the Mountain is going to have a sore back from carrying the team here, or really making it somewhat of a viable buy, but not really because it's not PC compatible at the moment. It won't take long for the PC modding community to come up with some kind of a crack or jailbreak to where you can use it on PC. And an even further note on that, it might be Sony themselves that provides PC support for their PlayStation games that they're porting over to PC, as I covered a gaming article stating that they were trying to port over a shitload of their library, their exclusives from PS4 and 5, to PC and mobile platforms. So maybe PC VR support directly from Sony, but that's just mere speculation. That's just AK-40 Kevin just spitting some bullshit. Who knows? It might never get PC support, in which case you're buying a $550 headset for one game. $600 actually, because if you're getting the bundle with the game. Plus you need a PS5 console, $400 for the digital only version, which I don't recommend a single soul breathing picks up. If you're curious why, there's a video linked in the description below. Class action lawsuit. Not with me, I'm not involved or anything, but Sony's involved. But $500 for the, I'm not going to say the real PS5, but the one that's a solid recommend from AK-40 Kevin and the Gamer Heaven. That would be the disc version, the optical disc version, the full regalia, the full beans. That's a sweet little loophole for making it seem like you have more games at launch by calling it the launch window. Hey, fuck man, a window can be 6 months after launch. It doesn't really make the headset more enticing at launch though, thus not a very robust launch library, IMO, or in my opinion. Multiple of these titles are ports or have already been on the Oculus Quest store, playable on VR for a while. On to the pros, the panels are absolutely killing it. The resolution's phenomenal. 120 hertz is decent. That's pretty much the standard. 144 hertz would have been great, but I didn't expect it. I knew that the headset wasn't going to have it because we've talked about the specs well prior in advance to the headset actually releasing. Wet the beak. Superman swirl going on there today. Sick. Next up, the headset is very light, which I am going to list as a pro because that definitely adds to comfort. Like I said, it's not a very comfortable headset for me due to their Halo design rather than having a top strap. Just my personal noggin, right? But the headset is very light, and this comes down to the fact that unlike the Quest 2, which does all its processing on board, it's basically got a little computer in there on your headset. The PSVR2, just like a PC-centric headset, is getting all its graphical grunt, all its processing power from the PC, or in this case, the console, the PS5, which is a freakishly powerful console. So things like a bulky onboard battery and processing equipment doesn't need to be in the headset. Basically, just the panels, the built-in speakers if they have them. Very light headset, which adds to comfort immensely. Next up, the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers and the Sense controllers were phenomenal. It added to the immersion. Absolutely what you would expect from the regular DualSense controller on PlayStation 5 games, especially first-party. Third-party games like Call of Duty take advantage of those features, but first-party SIE games really take advantage of those immersive features. Next up, the gasket or facial interface is very good because it is rubber, not cloth material, which these manufacturers unfortunately ship their goggles with most of the time, and you have to go to the aftermarket to get a rubber silicone one that you can easily wipe the sweat off after your sessions. This comes with that accordion design, which is fantastic for cutting out light bleed. There's like virtually no light bleed through the bottom or sides of the mask at all, and it is rubberized, very easy to clean. I like that a lot. So as for the verdict, is this headset worth a pickup? I would say at this time, no, considering this does not have PC support, and there's only like 3 notable launch games in the eyes of many gamers, only one, which would be the Innuendo on the Mountain. I've been mentioning this entire video, also gameplay footage, dank gameplay B-roll playing throughout the video. But other than that game and Resident Evil Village, which was okay, but really isn't as enjoyable level of an experience because it's not a built from the ground up VR experience. It is clearly a port. You can't even pick up or interact with a bunch of the shit in the environment. You want to reach out and pick up a marker or something off a table? No, you can't, man. It's just fixed there. And there's a bunch of other weird stuff in that game too, like fixed on rail cutscenes where it's nauseating because you're sitting there and it's like swinging the screen around as the guy's point of view, but you're not the one looking around. Wowzers. So is it worth picking up this headset at this moment? ATM, probably not unless you are a die-hard Horizon fan, in which case I will say, if you're all about the lore, the immersion of that world in the last 2 Horizon games, oh yes, it puts you in there just like Half-Life Alyx does with the Half-Life world. Having said that though, my friends, I would say hold out, just clinch onto your bank book, your pocketbook. Well, your pocketbook's like your date book, you know, but your coin purse, if you will, for Sony to start trickling out some dank first-party SIE games, VR games only. But even once that happens, without PC support, unfortunately the Quest 2, which is substantially cheaper, is a standalone wireless headset that has a lot more to offer in the versatility department because it does its own thing and doesn't need a computer or console. But if you want to do that, you can play things like Half-Life Alyx and a whole Steam library wirelessly or tethered to your PC. So that seems like a no-brainer when you word it like that. But there's so many other aspects, and there is honestly a reason that I own 3 headsets. They all do 3 distinct different things. They require different hardware, and they each do an individual thing very well. So what does the PSVR2 do well? First-party Sony interactive exclusives, one of them right now, but down the road, hopefully more of them. Drop in the comment section below your opinion of PSVR2 as well as VR as a whole. Do you think it's a big disorienting, blurry, puke-inducing mess, or is it just the bee's knees and the mule's nips? Are you and Sandy Sue just having the golly jeepers best old time using that lead-based paint and playing with your headset? If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the stallions and stallionettes of Gamer Heaven, join the community Discord and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding. Starting June, I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily. All the time. 60% of the time. Sometimes. Most of the time. Peace.